Hello, everyone, and welcome into Coach Craig's Sports. This is MLB DFS Core Pick video, Core Pick live stream for today, May 17th. It's Wednesday. Got a 7-game main slate going on today, so a little bit smaller slate than our typical normal, but you're going to have that a little bit with Wednesday, some games being played a little bit earlier. But in general, what we'll be doing in this video, going through recap of yesterday's picks, seeing how they turned out, talking about the weather impact on today's games. Doesn't look too bad at this point in time. Going over to FanDuel, talking about the core picks that I do have for today. One pitcher, 4 hitters. If you're brand new to my stream, checking it out for the very first time, going through kind of why I like those players, some past history in terms of pitcher versus hitter, stuff like that. And then last but not least, going over the YouTube community tab, checking out my cheat sheet and the bottom half, where I do have my top teams to stack for today overall. That cheat sheet is up on Facebook. It's up on Twitter. It's up on the YouTube community tab. It is 100% free. It's also up on Patreon if you want some more in-depth notes there on the daily, Monday through Friday. Small monthly donation over there, and you get access to that as well. But with that being said, I'm going to start off with the recap from yesterday. So at pitcher, I really like Zach Wheeler yesterday. He was $9,400, ended up getting to 30 points yesterday, so did give him a push. He was the 7th overall pitcher on yesterday's slate in terms of point scoring. Still pretty decent value. Obviously, we wish we would have got a little bit more for him, but he did give up 4 earned runs. If he gets the quality start, if he gets the win, be looking at about 40 points there if he doesn't give up that 4th run in that case. But it is what it is. Still a decent play. Wasn't anybody that really hurt us yesterday. Then in first base, we went with Josh Naylor. He is $2,600. Got to 3 points yesterday. Did give him a push since he didn't really kill us, but he didn't really help us at the same time. He was kind of that pay down option. Went 1 for 2 yesterday, but unfortunately did get hurt in yesterday's game. I believe it was a leg injury, which is kind of unfortunate to see since, if Josh Naylor was a guy that had a pretty big leg injury a couple years ago when he had that collision in the outfield. So do hope the best for him moving forward. Then we had Nolan Arenado at third base. We also had Jose Ramirez initially at first, but Jose Ramirez was placed on the bereavement list, which was kind of unfortunate. Did say you could swap over to Nick Senzel, Paul Goldschmidt, just kind of depending on what you had in your lineup. But we moved Nolan Arenado from that utility spot up to the third base slot. So Nolan Arenado was $3,000, 21.7 points yesterday. He was a hit. He ended up being the 6th overall third baseman, even though he had that 21.7 points. But there was a lot of good third base scoring on yesterday's slate. So definitely was a good play there once again. And then shortstop, Wilma Bobic had some pretty good history there in the past versus Domingo Germán, I believe it was, pitching for the Yankees yesterday. Got to 15.7 points. He was a hit. Ended up being the 6th overall shortstop. Some pretty good overall shortstop scoring day once again. Obviously, with 12 games out there, there's more players in play. So more higher scores that could be had in general. And then last but not least, like I said, with no Jose Ramirez, which was extremely unfortunate because he had some of the best history on the day. But for his sake, going on the bereavement list typically means like a member of your family did pass away. So do wish the best for him and his family at this point in time. So definitely, hopefully he's back soon, and hopefully his family is in good standing as well. But Nick Senzel was $3,500, 22.2 points. He was a hit. He ended up being the second baseman in terms of scoring, 4th third baseman, or 9th outfielder, just depending on what spot you played him. Ultimately, it was just kind of a utility play for us in spot of Jose Ramirez, but a guy that was super versatile and really paid off at his price tag. And then last but not least, there was Paul Goldschmidt, who had some previous good history versus Wade Miley. It did not happen yesterday at $4,000, only got 3 points, so he was missed if you ended up playing him. 0 for 4, but did have a walk. So that's kind of the recap in terms of yesterday. Going over to some of the weather report today, not going over to RotoWire at this point in time. At this point in time, weather looks to be not a concern at all. So if anything does change with that throughout the day, we'll list it down in the comments below. But with that being said, I'm going to stop sharing the recap screen. We'll go over to FanDuel and talk about the core picks that I do have for today overall. So just give me a minute here as this is loading. Was a little bit slower there today. But at the pitcher position, we have Corbin Burnes. He's only $10,000. There's some pretty good high-end pitching on tonight's slate, whether it's, Garrett Cole, Spencer Strider. A lot of guys that are in play. $9,500 or above. There's a plethora of guys that you could choose today. So probably mixing and matching a little bit today, depending on how many lineups you're rolling out. But in terms of my favorite play today, it's going to be Corbin Burnes. It's $10,000. Like I said already, he, a little bit up and down season so far, just averaging over 30 points on the season. His last start was really good, though. Going against the St. Louis Cardinals, he has good history versus them in the past. Last year, 4 starts against them, 31, 40, 61, and 64 points. So 3 out of the 4 starts were really good. The other one, would have been like a push status. But, Corbin Burns on the season, he's got 4 wins, the 3.35 ERA, 30.4 points on the season. Coming off that really strong start last time out where he got the 49 points. There's been a couple slower starts to the year, which sometimes happens a little bit with Corbin Burns, but do like the upside that he does present today overall at a pretty reasonable price tag at $10,000. Then at first base, we're going right back to Jose Abreu. Hasn't had the greatest start to the year, but 2 days ago we played him. He really paid off. He has really good history throughout his career against the Cubs. For whatever reason, he just plays really good against them, obviously. Being a former Chicago White Sox, crosstown rivalry and everything else like that. But he is 6 for 11 with 1 home run versus Drew Smyly in his career. Still only $2,400. Do like taking advantage of that price point today. The season stats aren't the greatest. 219, still no home runs, but it has 16 RBIs. So, averaging just 6 fantasy points per game, only 0 for 3 yesterday, but the day before when we did play him. I like playing him against the Cubs, especially against a pitcher that he does have good history. If it's somebody you really don't want to play, obviously switch off to somebody else, but looking like a pretty decent pay down spot for today overall. Then at third base, we're going with his teammate Alex Bregman. He's $2,800. Another guy that has kind of had that slow start to the season. 210 average, 5 home runs, 19 RBIs, averaging just over 9 fantasy points per game on the season. Only $2,800 though. At some point this year, Alex Bregman is going to be a lot more expensive than this. Kind of been that up and down season for him. So as of late, looking to be a little bit better. Had the 3-game hitting streak before yesterday. So do like the upside that's there. He's 3 for 9 versus Drew Smyly with 1 home run in his career. Play this probably a little bit more hit or miss than it would typically be with a hitter like Alex Bregman. But you have to think sooner or later that he's going to start figuring it out too as well. And then we move down to the outfield. Start off with Teoscar Hernandez at $2,800, averaging just over 9 fantasy points per game, going against the Boston Red Sox. Brian Bayo is the pitcher for them today. A pretty young and inexperienced pitcher, ERA right around 5 at this point in time for this year. And Teoscar Hernandez is 2 for 6 for him in his career. Obviously faced him a little bit in Toronto last season. Teoscar is a very streaky hitter. And as of late, he's been on that hotter streak. So we see the 242 average, 8 home runs, 22 RBIs, averaging 9.4 fantasy points per game, $2,800 salary. And, he's been double-digit fantasy points the last 4 games. He's got a 5-game hitting streak going on right now. So it seems like he's kind of getting back on track, getting on that hot streak. So we might as well take advantage of that at a cheaper price tag at this point in time. And then last but not least, we're going with another guy that is a little bit on a hot streak. Very strong week last week in Luis Robert Jr., $3,600. Got that average up to 274 now. 12 home runs, 28 RBIs, averaging over 12 fantasy points per game. $3,600 price tag there. Going against the Cleveland Guardians, I believe Peyton Battenfield pitching for them today. Still a very young, unproven pitcher. Luis Robert has never faced him in his career before, but do like taking advantage of a player like Luis Robert who has that really, really strong upside and been really hitting the ball well as of late. Last 4 games over 20 points. We'd have double-digit points for 5 straight games. Lost his hitting streak in there a little bit too, but as of late, as of this month, he's been crushing the ball. And $3,600 is not a bad price tag whatsoever for him. But with that being said, if you go with these 5 players that I do have listed here at this point in time, you have $13,400 remaining, just over $3,300 per player. So a little bit of room, flexibility if you want to pay up for some other players. Definitely have the potential to do that. If you want to pay down for some guys, you can do that as well. If you want to do a little bit more balanced approach, that's definitely fine on today's slate, 7-game main slate. Not a lot of history there in terms of hitter versus pitcher. The ones that really stand out are going to be up in my Patreon notes, but feel free to mix and match today. 7-game slate, get a little bit creative, especially if you're playing multiple lineups today overall. But with that being said, going to close out of the FanDuel side. We're going to go over to the YouTube community tab, bottom half of the cheat sheet, and talk about my top teams to stack for today overall. So let me get that brought up here real quickly, and then we'll start talking about it. So the Cleveland Guardians are popping up once again. Obviously, they did not pay off yesterday versus Lanceland. Lanceland had not done very well, had some pretty poor history versus Cleveland, but missing Jose Ramirez is kind of a big blow there at the same time. So do like them a little bit against Mike Clevenger. Today, he didn't have the greatest starts versus them last season. There's not a lot of history there, but do like, the fact that Mike Clevenger is pretty hittable. Do like that Cleveland's a team that is able to generate contact most of the time. So they are pretty decent in general. You got some decent price tags. It's probably still missing Jose Ramirez today. I think he's got to miss at least 3 days. And then Josh Naylor with his injury, they might be missing him as well. So Keep that in mind as you're building the stacks, but should be a pretty cheap stack overall to attack today. Then we have the Seattle Mariners. They're going against Brian Bayo of the Boston Red Sox, like I mentioned earlier when we were talking about Teoscar Hernandez. Bayo's got an ERA right around 5. He's kind of been hit or miss so far this year. Do like taking some advantage of this Mariners team. Don't really have too many of them in the core since they don't really have much history versus Bayo. Teoscar Hernandez is pretty much the only one at this point in time. I think Colin Wong has like one at bat versus him too as well, but he has not done very well to start this year. But if you want to go after Teoscar Hernandez, Julio Rodriguez, Ty France, Jared Kelnick, if you want to go after him too. Eugenio Suarez ends up in my cheat sheet at $2,900. Think he's a pretty decent value as well. So definitely some bats that we can attack there overall. Then we have the Milwaukee Brewers. Liked them quite a bit when I was going through this last night when Adam Wainwright was the projected starting pitcher. They have called up Matthew Liberatore, though. However, today, left-handed pitcher, very young player. Had some starts last year. Had a pretty decent start for Milwaukee last year. Not a lot of history there, but do like some of them bats against him in general. Jesse Winker was in my cheat sheet. He had pretty good history versus Adam Wainwright. If you really want to throw him out there versus Matthew Liberatore, that's up to you guys. Just a little bit different there. Left-handed on lefty split, but Winker hasn't been the greatest to start the year as well. But definitely a lot of bats that we could attack from this Brewers team. Maybe it's, a Rowdy Tellez, a William Contreras. Some of these right-handed bats against left-handed pitchers should make some sense as well. And then last but not least, we have the Houston Astros. Already talked a little bit about Jose Abreu and Alex Bregman. Not a lot of these hitters really have history versus Drew Smyly, but do like taking advantage of some of them today. So definitely does make a lot of sense there overall. Smiley is one of those pitchers that's really hit or miss. Like some starts, he'll go like 4 innings, 4 2/3 innings, not be the greatest, not have the greatest control. And then other starts, he'll go out there and pitch 7 innings. So a little bit of hit or miss to that, but do like this Astros team once again today. Obviously, 7-game main slate, so feel free to mix and match. But with that being said, that's pretty much what I do have in terms of MLB DFS core picks, top stacks, all that good stuff for today. If you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to drop it down in the comments and I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. Also, we'll try to have as many starting lineups down there as possible throughout the day as they do get announced for the main slate. And then with that being said, also very interested in hearing what you guys have to say in terms of your favorite play for today, whether it's someone from my core 5 picks, whether it's someone from my cheat sheet, whether it's someone from my top GPP stacks, or whether it's a completely different player you guys think I'm definitely interested in hearing who that is for you today. But with that being said, if you are checking out my video, checking out my channel for the very first time, you enjoy the content that I'm putting out, would ask you that you do subscribe to the channel. Definitely means a lot to me, helps to build the community here at Coach Craig Sports, which is one that's truly for you, the viewers, helping you with your DFS. Right now, it's mainly MLB DFS and USFL DFS. Going to try to mix in a little bit of Dynasty fantasy football content here and there, some deeper waiver wire ads, names to add for, the upcoming season, everything else like that. If that's something you're interested in, definitely be sure to check that out as well. Going to keep those pretty short though. So that might be later this week or early next week when I do a little bit of that. But with that being said, definitely do appreciate everyone taking the time out of their day to tune into this video. Definitely does mean a lot to me. Hopefully you all enjoyed it. Hopefully you got a little bit of information for the slate for today, but definitely appreciate you guys checking it out. Hopefully each and every one of you has a great rest of your day and some pretty good luck in MLB DFS tonight.